And I also think it was just fantastic how Coulson turned out to have a flying car, how it even appears in a later episode. And when you want to talk about not enough epic action, the whole scene where they have to escape from Deathlock and have to fly out of an airplane in a flying car, and Sky doesn't have her seatbelt on, and then the joke about parking, that shows that the show was very creative, imaginative, humorous, and that whole scene, it was just excellent. And in fact, in general, Coulson just turns out to have a lot more of a fun side to him. We see he has kind of a midlife crisis, how he tries to assemble a new team, and we also see just how much the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. affected him, and we see just how much the ordinary trustworthy agent like him is important. We see the relationship develop between him and Agent Hand, and even if you look at all of the characters that get killed off, from Agent Hand to Garrett to Poe, there are a lot of deaths in this, and it can be very graphic for a TV show, and I also like the ambition on that level. And what's also incredibly interesting is just, if you look at the fire effects, I don't see how people think that this show had an underwhelming effects budget. If you expected right off the bat the first episode to be great, then maybe, but even that had an excellent action scene at the end. And if you look at in the second episode how their plane is nearly hijacked, that was also fantastic. And it's also interesting to see how a lot of the moral dilemmas don't have easy answers, because in the end Coulson's former protege will have to be tried, and she doesn't automatically have an happy ending. So I also thought that showed how the show was really willing to be tragic and to have darker moments. And also thought it was incredibly excellent how Coulson did not reunite with his lover, but he did get a moment to talk to her while she thought that it was a dream. That made him even more tragic, and to see that Coulson could be mentally broken, that he actually did partially give in to Reyna before they showed up, that was also very interesting. All of that was very effective, to see him start to distrust the system, to see him and Sky start to conspire, to see how everybody slowly starts to lie, how that made the whole who's the clairvoyant, May is working for the clairvoyant, no war, this situation feel very natural, because yeah, they're spies, so there is going to be a lot of distrust, especially because Coulson starts to distrust Fury, May works for Fury, Sky also is injected with alien blood, and that also was incredibly interesting, because they had that very eerie music from the beginning that foreshadowed that this was part of a greater storyline, and we find out that it could make people mentally unstable. We find that Coulson's mind has been messed with. All of that was just, well, incredibly intriguing, and I also think that helped keep the whole clairvoyance storyline interesting, that it also delved into such deep questions of whether Coulson was still really himself. And in the later episodes, it actually feels natural that people start questioning his sanity, and therefore it also made sense that, well, Nick Fury would erase his memory of the event, because it was the only way of preserving his sanity. And it actually was possible that Hydra was behind that project as well, although it turned out not to be the case. And again, that's why I think that this show is so effective. I did like a lot of the MacGuffins. I liked the whole Centipede program, because it tied into the super soldier serum from the Incredible Hulk, and also from the first Captain America. And therefore, it also made perfect sense that Hydra was behind this. They made references to Extremis. They showed how it could be stabilized in more detail, and they took advantage of Scorch's abilities in that regard. It has graphic torture scenes. It can be really dark, it can be creative. So I really don't see why people were so underwhelmed by this, especially because Coulson's torture was also incredibly effective, especially because they not only gave him a very effective backstory, but also kept May's backstory nicely ambiguous, which was very well shown in the second season. And they even delve into some very existential philosophical questions. They have one episode dealing with religion that could satisfy both Christians and atheists, because is this guy really going to hell, or is he just stuck between worlds? That was an incredibly interesting question, and it dealt with forgiveness and letting go. And that was incredible, that the woman says only God can forgive you, and then we see May saying, but he won't. A character saying God won't forgive you, that's not conventional. I think that's fantastic. And I don't even believe in that. I believe God can forgive you, but a message of you have to let go in spite of there being no forgiveness, that's amazing. And if you look at things like Lady Sif's appearance, the morphing effects, all of those still look excellent. And we have we have cars blowing up. We have Deathlock taking entire soldiers down. And you even had more supporting agents, like the one who gets hospitalized because he wasn't on a team that he had either Ward or Garrett. And that was also very interesting that they had a double blind. One of the members of the team knew which person they were going to go after, and the other one knew the coordinates. But that meant that either Garrett knew where he would be going and he knew not to send Deathlock there, or it meant that he knew to what person they were going, and he obviously knew all of the false clairvoyant leads, so he could just make sure that one of the agents he didn't like got taken out. And to delve into the characters just a little bit more, I mean, Sky is rebellious and she's stubborn, and in the beginning she's also manipulative. She has a very sarcastic sense of humor. Hey, my Dutch accent showed just a little bit, but she has a very sarcastic sense of humor, and she can also be spiteful and rebellious, but at the same time she also really does care about people, and she slowly grows to really see the value of S.H.I.E.L.D. And she also in the beginning wants to have all of the information out in the open, which is what happens in Captain America the Winter Soldier. And she also really lacks an identity. She's searching for who she really wants to be. She also has a more naive side. She is at the same time very loyal to her friends. She's also incredibly courageous. The fact that she actually got shot was also incredibly intense and reminded me of the pilot of Firefly. And we also see, how Ward can really have a hot temper while usually being very closed off, but he can also be vengeful, and he can be stubborn and disobedient, and at the same time he can also have a sense of humor to him, but he's more serious, and he's more straightforward. And at the same time, I also think people complained that Fitz and Simmons were too similar, but at the same time you can see how Simmons is a little bit of a modelly figure, and she's very comforting and supportive, and also we really see that she's a very difficult liar, while Fitz is just more awkward, and at the same time he also does have a sense of pride, and he really wants to impress Simmons, and in the beginning he's jealous of Ward, so I don't see how these characters would be too simplistic. And if you also look at May, she's incredibly responsible and tough and helpful, while also being very closed off, while she wasn't always like that, and the fact that she has an old friendship with Coulson also made the relationship all the more interesting and showed sides to Coulson that we hadn't seen before. So personally, I thought that the characters were very strong, and also think it's interesting how Garrett turned out to be a real psychopath and also to be really violent. Well, he did like a lot of the people in the team, but we see just how much, having been mortally injured and not having received help influenced him. It made him feel betrayed by S.H.I.E.L.D. It made him more opportunistic and obsessive with survival, and he needed to work together with Cybertech in order to survive, and that just slowly made him more and more dark and depraved, and I think it's very understandable that he would want to live. And how we see him going crazy also felt incredibly natural, considering what had been foreshadowed, and they set up the second season with that perfectly. And also think Deathlock is very interesting because they can kill him at any moment. Those devices within the eyes really made for a lot of very suspenseful moments and for difficult situations where they had to try to free the people. And it's very interesting how we found out that handlers sometimes have handlers. I thought it was great how they ended up using a bomb to hijack the place, how they ended up stealing an army truck. That whole sequence was awesome, and how they had to actually free Ace, how they broke into the system. The whole climax was perfect. I think it's fantastic, and it's also interesting how they got the army on their asses, how that tied into the Winter Soldier, how Nick Fury was secretly still working behind the scenes, how he used the weapon that he used in the Avengers. There's so many great tie-ins here that all feel natural and that serve a purpose. So I think this is an excellent show, and I also think it's excellent just how many twists they managed to throw at us in a row, and how they really show in detail the disintegration of S.H.I.E.L.D. and also the scope of the whole storyline, and just how the body count is incredibly high, like it is in Captain America the Winter Soldier. I also thought that was incredibly effective. Lastly, I think the music was fantastic. It was often very suspenseful and eerie, and it also helped make the mystery more effective, while it could also be dark, and at the same time it had its very adventurous moments. And personally, I did really like the sense of humor. Some people complained it was too cheesy, but let's be honest, so was a lot of the humor in the Avengers. It's part of, and you're gonna crucify me. And then burn me, and then burn my remains, and then drown the burnt, you're gonna do horrible things to me for saying that. But it's true, the Avengers had a lot of very obvious comic book-like humor, and with lines like, with great power comes a whole bunch of shit that you're not prepared for, I really don't see how people can complain about it that much. Personally, I think that this show just managed to do a lot of fantastic things, and I think people should appreciate it for what it is, and for what it is, I thought it was very strong. So, I thought it was excellent, great action, great music, and great effects for a TV show, great production values. Personally, I thought the actors kept getting better and more natural, and they also managed to have really dramatic episodes like the ones where Simmons almost died. They managed to take real risks with their characters. They managed to have a lot of graphic moments that wouldn't satisfy younger viewers. I thought it took a lot of risks, and I personally think that most of them paid off. The story was ambitious, and lastly, I also think that it touched very well, not only on the issue of letting go, but also of being yourself, and of honesty, and of trust, while at the same time also being willing to question the system. I thought all of that was very strong, and I thought it often was delivered in a very even-handed and realistic way. So yeah, great thematic depth, well acted characters, great backstories. I think it took advantage of a more drawn out story very well, and I personally had no problem with the pacing. So people even complained that the first season of Legend of Korra was too fast paced, which was epic from the beginning. So I really don't know what people exactly want from TV shows, but whatever. Maybe people just had unreasonable expectations because it was Marvel. And yeah, Marvel is fantastic. But I think the show was Marvel on a small screen in an excellent way. So that's my piece on this issue. And I don't have anything clever to say, so get the fuck out of here or I'll kill you with this beer bottle. There you go. Go away. Cool.